New York, I was like instantly in it. I was instantly like defensive of characters that everyone was mad at for reasons that I didn't think were justified. I was instantly like, oh, she's a queen. I love that outfit. And I was like putting together like lookbooks in my mind of if I were to emulate some of these women. And like I saw myself going like, I think I'm gonna watch this. Like, so yeah, I definitely could watch. The New York one was starting to take over my life as I was watching it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's a great season to jump into New York because it's like a fresh start. It's a hard reboot. All of these are new cast members, so you don't need to worry about getting that whole backstory because the whole fan base is getting to know all of these new champions that are emerging. So you
Okay.
can get in kind of at the ground level on this. Let's start with New York if that was the one that kind of engaged you the most. What were your first impressions of each of these women, or who stood out to you?
Okay. I love Jenna so much.
Yeah, Team
She's just
Jenna.
like, yeah, okay, good. Cause I just like anything they were criticizing her on was something I feel is totally justified. And um I think these women have just been socialized differently than Jenna has, and Jenna's just very much her own person and very like take it or leave it. And I didn't think she did anything wrong. I don't think she's ever done anything wrong. Um, but I just like I love the way she dressed. I love the way she presented herself. I love the way she presented her ideas, the way she communicated. And I wasn't expecting to watch Real Housewives and hear someone talking about the male gaze or like gender dynamics or so she was just bringing things to the table that I was like, oh, I could see my friends and I talking about this stuff. So it just kind of grounded the whole show for me to keep checking in with Jenna.
Yeah, she provided like very great through line through this whole season so far. Is we've
Yeah.
referred to it as the Jenna Lyons show, and this continued this trend because she is definitely like the most engaging of the personalities that we are seeing, and just brings such a fresh, unique perspective that it's awesome to see. And I'm like she's just the standout here. I actually think that this is a great cast all in all,
Yeah.
but she is just such an all-star that like she's an immediate standout.
I did like them all. Like I will say like after watching Orange County, it was a bit of a breath of fresh air just in the sense that with Orange County, it makes sense now that you said they've been on for seasons and seasons because it felt like they were speaking in riddles to me sometimes. um, but I was like, okay, this is all going back, whereas this is fresh. So probably I was just instantly like, oh, New York feels a little more like the women just everything yeah, even if I didn't agree, everything they said kind of made sense. I could follow their logic. They were intelligent. I thought Ubah was really funny. She was cracking some jokes
Yeah.
and I was appreciating sometimes that's where I often don't see eye to eye on the type of women I'll see on reality TV. I'll say that where like the sense of humor, I'm just like, oh, they would think I'm a fucking freak. Like they wouldn't understand a word I'm saying. But Uba had like a real little wit to her that I very much enjoyed. And yeah, I had a moment with each one of them. I'll say where I was like, okay, they all like you said, they're compelling. I liked watching them.
Yeah, did anyone like really rub you the wrong way?
Yes, I don't. Okay, Jessel. We know Jessel was being a real Rudy Tooty in this episode, so I feel like that's like the go-to. Like Jessel was being rude, but I don't know enough about her to be like that's who she is. Because I'm also like, it does suck when everyone gets a gift of lingerie and yours is the ugly one. Like I also didn't think that
Yeah.
lingerie was nice, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, thanks. Like I wouldn't do what she did, but I'm also like I would feel kind of sad that my free gift of lingerie wasn't very nice. And then I also Brynn to me was very much playing a character for the cameras, and I'm not about that. And I know everyone's doing that to a degree, but she was very like muttering to herself in such a way and walking in such a way that I was like, okay, like, can we drop that for 2 seconds? That said, I will say that showing up to a party with athleisure and a floor length fur coat is high
Mm.
camp. I'm all about it. I
Yeah.
love that.
Also showing up in a vehicle chauffeured by this guy who looks like the most classic like Irish thug.
Yeah.
She's being chauffeured around like she's fucking Jimmy Hoffa. That was such a good entrance.
It's a boss move for sure. Yeah. I was like, I have to give it to her for that.
Yeah, I would agree that Bryn is definitely like playing up a character for sure. Like I think that's unquestionable. But
Yeah, you
I
fail to open that wine cellar door once. Okay, the second
yeah.
time you're pushing it. You're playing a role.
Yeah.
But I think she like really understands, you know, what the show needs and how to like really make a mark. And I think like she's definitely trying to like shoehorn herself in, but you know, she has crafted a character that I think really plays well on this show, and I find it like super enjoyable. I think she's really, I think she's funny. Like I think that like she um I think she like creates great moments, like when everyone is doing a workout and she's there just doing commentary and hanging off the arm of the trainer.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
by the way, I
I
love how she says to him, "Wow, do you work out?" Like, yeah, he's a fitness trainer, Bryn. That's why he's
I
here. It's keep up.
you, you know what's so funny about that is I literally wrote down, I hate when women act like this and I hate that it works. And you're like, I think it's
Yeah.
charming. It's funny because you could call me out for the same thing. Like my boyfriend and I will talk about that all the time where like I let cute boys get away with shit. He lets cute girls get away with shit, you know, like it happened. But I was just like, oh my God, like this thing where she's like coming up to him and being like, can I do you? And I'm like, ew, Bryn. Like I was just like,
It's very
so
straightforward. Yeah.
yeah. When someone described it as flirting, I was like, is that flirting or just straight up sexual harassment? Like I I like a little more subtle. That being said, even when I watch like a RuPaul's Drag Race, I tend to like the ones that will sometimes get critiqued for not playing it up enough for the camera. Like I like just like I like a real person who yeah is drawing on things that are already there instead of crafting a persona. That said, I appreciate that I'm not the typical viewer and she's very much doing like what Paris Hilton was doing back in the day with I don't think she's I think she's, you know, that expression like stupid like a fox or whatever it is, where women like play up this bimbo thing because they know that it's fun and that people will maybe it puts people's guard down so that you can get away with more shit. So I was like, I see what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that that is like that's a bang on read. I think there's like I think she also deserves a little bit of credit just in terms of the like the social strategy in the Housewives game. I think she has a pretty good read on where to pick her moments in terms of how to use information or use situations for leverage. I think we saw a really great scene with her at the when they went for lunch in Sag Harbor, and she was bringing up the fact that you know Erin has made up very quickly with Jenna, but if she were to do the exact same thing, that she would you know be sleeping on the street and she wouldn't get away. And I think that's an
Yeah.
accurate read. She would
It
not get
is
away
a
with that.
1000% double quadruple standard times 10, right?
See, and that's so funny because I'm looking at my notes right now, and I wrote literally, Bryn, what the fuck? This is not a double standard. Because I feel that, but okay, this is also full disclosure. Like I've already said, I'm in love with Jenna. I love everything Jenna does. So I thought it made sense. The only thing I can fault Jenna for is that she shouldn't have tried to make this sleepover work when she knew she had this 6 a.m. thing. She should have just known herself and been like, guys, I'm not going to stay over. You're all going to be like screaming and drinking. She knows these girls. So I was like, why would you think you could get some shut eye? That being said, I think it's a little different to be like, oh my gosh, I live 10 minutes away. I'm so sorry, but I do need to get some sleep. I'm going to take off. I didn't mind that. I didn't think it was the big deal everyone was making it out to be. I think that's something I would do. I think it's something any of my friends would do. But being like, I can't be seen in that restaurant because it's not this year. And then Erin does say, you didn't speak to me for weeks and Jenna made up with me within hours. And I was like, fair. Like, um, I didn't think it was the double standard she was making it out to be. But I don't know these women that well, so maybe there's been other examples of that.
No, I mean I think you're entirely right. But I also feel like it doesn't need to have like an actual like moral or like true like social base in order for it to be used for like social manipulation. Like she can still
Gamesmanship.
keep, yeah, for gamesmanship, which is
Yeah.
a huge part that you'll see if you end up like watching a full
Okay.
season. Like there is like a bit of a game to it, and even if, you know, even if you are being a bit of a hypocrite with something, but you're using your information in a way that can manipulate the social situation in your favor, I think that it's a like a smart, you know, that's kind of playing the game smart, because you can bring people back onto your side or sort of like temper their approach when they're coming at you for whatever situation. But I think like your read on it like morally and socially is bang on. Um,
Okay. I sorry to interrupt, but that's exciting to me. I didn't realize there's like a strategy aspect to this show, and that illuminates a part of me that I have no mind for strategy at all. Like, I don't play like board game. Like when I'm playing like Scrabble, people will be like, "Ooh, if I get this word, like it'll end up on this tile," and like I'm just excited to like spell words. So like I'm just like, "Oh my god, I have all the letters to spell this word. Yay." And like that's the whole game to me, is just like getting a random assortment of tiles and spelling a word. But then I'll play with people that are like combining three different words to make like to get so many points, and I'm like, I never would have, I'm never thinking that far ahead. I'm never like, this also speaks to like my comedy career. I'm very just like, whatever comes my way is what I'm gonna do. So it makes sense that I wouldn't see the strategy, because I'm always just taking things at like face value, what makes the most logical sense. And it's harder for me to see things from that lens, so that is putting a lot of things in perspective for me now that you say that.
yeah, I think we like also just as viewers, we have the, you know, we've got the privilege of like retrospective and being able to see things like very removed from the situation. So, um, you know, that definitely like colors the perspectives that we have as, you know, commentators on this situation. And you know, you can like, I use strategy. There might be a, like a better word for it, since there isn't an like an ultimate end goal. You can't really win Housewives. You can just
But
survive Housewives. So,
It's like
um,
life.
yeah.
that does make
uh,
sense. And I have, you know, I act like I'm so innocent to strategy, but I understand social dynamics and knowing people well enough to play a chip a certain way. Like, you know, I've been in situations where I've had to suss things out, and yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I'm like, okay, so there's a game, there's a bit of a social game going on here.
yeah, totally. Let's get into the highlights for New York. What really stood out to you?
Okay, yeah, I have some things in bold here. Oh, I really liked in the morning, I thought it was really cute when Sai said, I like to wake up to gratitude. I just like, I thought that was
Also,
a really,
when Sai's like, "You bitches complain a lot. Your energy's off." Like, what are you doing right now, Sai? What is that?
yeah. And that's, oh my God, that's such a funny observation, because when I was younger, I remember getting into like laws of attraction, positive thinking, blah, blah. And I was in an acting class, and I would walk into the class and be like, you guys are so negative. Cause like
Yeah,
I was like,
totally.
because I was in my 20s and didn't understand what it actually means to do positive thinking. But I thought it was really sweet when I just like, it's always going to be little things like that. I like to wake up to gratitude. And then later she's like, does nobody notice that we're staying in a for free house? And like later when she mentions that she grew up poor, that put it all in
Yeah.
perspective. But and she
Mhm.
says free 99, which is a cute expression. I liked that whole
Yeah.
thing. And I just like it was a cute. I sometimes struggle with reality shows because people speak in sound bites. So I like to find them when they're being a little just clumsier, sillier, ditzier. I like to wake up to gratitude as
Yeah.
just like a cute little thing to say.
Totally.
Oh, but then on the flip side, there was a soundbite that I very much enjoyed when Jenna was like, "You're all adults. You could have done whatever you wanted with your breakfast." And then it cuts to the confessional and she says, "Are you shitting me?" Over the shakshuka, which popularized by Love is Blind, a show that I do watch a lot and makes me feel sick inside, but I can't stop watching because my friends send me voice notes about it and then I have to watch. Are you shitting me was such a good line. And just being like, what? I told you I didn't want to eat. By the way, I looked up shakshuka, a very like garlic heavy meal to have right before you work out. She's in the right, but she's like, you could have eaten your garlic and eggs before doing a hard workout. I'm not stopping you.
I've never
So,
heard people say shakshuka so many times
oh my
in
God.
like 45 minutes of video. Actually, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say shakshuka out loud, but it's still a lot of times.
Did you watch the season of Love is Blind where it came up?
No,
No,
never
I
did.
haven't
Okay.
seen that.
Interesting because this one guy matched with this woman because in the pods, he was like, he's like this southern like cowboy guy and he's like, I like to cook, I like to make shakshuka, and she's like, what, are you kidding, I love shakshuka, and like that's what started their relationship really, and their whole connection was that he a knew what shakshuka was and b knew how to make it. So then you heard the word shakshuka like so many times to the point where like that whole week I was walking down, I live in Queen West, and I was walking down and I was seeing all the little like sandwich boards were like, we have shakshuka, like it just like started a craze. I've still yet to try it,
I
but yeah.
I love the idea of Real Housewives of New York having like a counterpoint in Love is Blind where shakshuka brings people together in one show and tears them apart in another. It's really
Yes.
beautiful. Beautiful
It
symmetry that we see here on in reality TV.
that is beautiful symmetry. And do you think Erin watched Love is Blind and wanted to make shakshuka because she watched it? Do you think that's how she heard about the dish? Do you think she'd be the type to watch that show?
That's a good question. I feel like she would probably have watched it or have been aware of it in some capacity. Um, yeah, I don't know. I Erin's an interesting one because I still feel like I don't really know her. We're 3 episodes in. I feel like I've got a good sense of the cast, but Erin is one that is still kind of like eluding me in terms of who she is. The only thing I know about her is that she's a bad host.
Is that how you feel as well?
About yeah, I don't know anything about Erin either, but I don't think she's made a great impression so far. I think it's been like a little negative, a little defensive, and still waiting to have like the moment where she like reveals a little bit about like her fears and ambitions and stuff to give her some more depth as a person.
Yeah, come to think of it, I didn't get much of an impression of Erin either. I guess like it was easy enough to think, "Oh, I'm getting an idea of this woman because she was hosting and she was like kind of in charge." But when I actually try and look back to who is she and what's she all about? Yeah, I don't I don't know. She's got a nice house.
Yeah.
The heat doesn't work, but she has a nice house. I had another I had one more oh, I did a lot of highlights. Okay, which one will I pick? Um oh, okay, I really liked, cuz I like seeing these things, when Brynn So I talked about how I don't love her style of flirting. So there is a tiny moment I liked where she turns to the chef and she's like, "Why don't you just stick it in there?" Like he's like putting something on her plate, and he just ignores her and keeps walking. And then under her breath, and then under her breath, she goes, "Oh, there's other people here." Like she kind of like justifies it to herself. And I felt and I really liked
Yeah.
seeing a moment for her of being like kind of clumsy socially because we didn't see a lot of that.
Mhm.
So that kind of like muttering under the breath, like feeling a little bit hurt and a little rejected was fun. It was just like a silly tiny moment, but I liked it.
Yeah, I thought that this whole dinner scene was a lot of fun and like I was laughing at Brynn, I was laughing at Jessel, I was laughing at Ubah. Like everyone, I think, really had a great moment.
Yeah,
I
Ubah's
loved,
lied about. I feel like I'm watching a French movie. I'm not sure
yeah.
I understand what she's saying, but I love it. I love it. I thought it was great.
Oh my god. Yeah, I loved all the little like commentary of like what? And then when they started playing Two Truths and a Lie, and one thing I did want to point out, I don't know if this is a highlight, but just something I wanted to point out. It's really hard for me when uh women who pride themselves on having a lot of sex but have no sense of their anatomy or their genital health, because putting a popsicle up your vagina, you knew we had to talk about this. Like sugar in the vagina upsets the pH balance and you will get a yeast infection. And I just feel like that wasn't pointed out at any point. They did say, "Oh, we're looking it up and doctors urge women not to," but I was just like,
Yeah.
I understand this was in her younger years. You know, we've all done inadvisable things with our bodies. But I was just like, I would have loved for there to be a little pop up on the screen, like, please don't do this.
A
Because
little
I felt,
Surgeon's General warning.
yeah, just anything.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they were all like, oh, I'm so adventurous sexually. But I was like, that's fine. But if you're going to be like that, you should be aware of sexual health. Like, I think those are part and parcel. And it was a little concerning to me that these women are adults who nobody mentioned. I do think Jenna, my girl, said, I don't think that's healthy, but she didn't say why. And
Yeah.
I'm here to say why. It's because you'll get a yeast infection.
Also, I just want to say their two truths and a lie were fucking easy across the board. It was all like,
Yeah.
I slept with a bassist. I blew the Secretary of State in the West Wing. Like, okay, come on, we know which one it is. Come on.
And they were all sexual, which I was like, I understand. It's girls' night. I find Two Truths and a Lie so much more interesting when you say something like truly twisted and shocking about yourself that leads to
Mhm.
like an amazing story, as opposed to just like, I've had sex in an elevator. Like, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like, I already believe that about you. Like, I don't know. I want to really get to know you with Two Truths and a Lie. I want you to, like, let's get into childhood trauma. Like, maybe that's just like my friends, but that's what I would have enjoyed a little more.
Yeah, Jenna was the only one who's like, I'm gonna bring up embarrassing stuff about myself and not just be like humble bragging about people I fucked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, and this was a complete missed opportunity to give some backstory, like you say, Melanie. Like it could have been a real opportunity to introduce yourself as a person on this show, and really missed the mark. And I took like especially took offense to Erin's two truths and a lie, where she was like her truth or one of her truths was that she had sex in a senator's office, and
Yeah.
then she's like, I don't want to talk about it at all, I'm not telling you this story. It's like, why would you bring that up? Like, why not choose something else then? It was
To make
like,
Just
herself more
something
mysterious.
I've
Also,
always.
she never
No.
said federal senator, so I choose to believe it's a state senator, which is much less impressive.
I've always thought, yeah, that the point of those games is that at some point it turns into a conversation and you kind of forget that you were playing the game. Like
Mm,
they were playing it very like, my turn. Okay, my turn. No, I'm not going to tell you that story. And I was like, what? Like you said, like the whole point is
yeah.
to ask questions and get a story out of someone. I thought, I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and also oftentimes on these shows when we see like these social dinner party games being played, it's used as an opportunity to like instigate a fight and like stir up drama. And I was a little disappointed that no one's one of someone's truths wasn't Aaron is a great host, because she was a
Ah.
terrible host this weekend. And I feel like, Jessel or Sai even could have, brought this up, or Brynn, just try to like stir something up here. But it was a little bit of a waste, but it was still was like fun to see them kind of playing around and at least getting a bit more comfortable with each other.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. But yeah, I think that I never even thought of that. That would have been a great opportunity to throw some shade.
Totally. Did you have any other highlights?
I mean, I loved when they couldn't turn on the fireplace and Bryn said we're so fucking stupid. That made me laugh. That's
By the
just
way, Sai
cute.
was right. Just throw a match on it. The gas is there. Throw a match on it. Sai had the
Is
right
that
idea.
true? I
I
thought
mean,
that
sure,
sounded
right? If you've got the
dangerous to
gas
me.
ignited, I mean, how much gas could have escaped so far? It's outdoors. You're not inside.
Sai also had a really great quote there that I wrote down. When you grew up poor, I just throw the match in the oven and it comes on. And I wrote, what? Because I guess I didn't grow up with a gas oven, but I was just like,
Right.
oh, like she was just like, um, so I found that funny. Is there anything else worth bringing up? Oh, okay, the only other highlight I want to bring up is an outfit that they only very briefly showed that Jenna was wearing that I loved in the confessionals. She was wearing a menswear shirt with a tie and a pearl necklace. And I thought that was so smart. And they only showed it one time. And they talk about her like she's not a fashionista, but I was like, every single thing she wears is immaculate to me. And I don't know that if that's like they like she mentioned very much dress for the male gaze and the way she dresses is maybe not so much for that, but I was just like what a chic ensemble. So I just wanted to shout out that outfit because I loved it.
Yeah. And to
Yeah.
be clear, she is also a famous fashion designer.
Yeah. I did
Yeah.
find that after and I was like that makes sense, and I did recognize her from Girls, which
Right. Yes.
yeah, I forgot that she was on that, but I was like, "Oh, she looks familiar." And then I realized I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this
Yeah.
this broad is famous."
But you brought up something about, how Jenna made a comment about, dressing for the male gaze. And this was something that I picked up as really interesting because it is like a unique perspective that we haven't really had vocalized on Housewives. Like there have been gay housewives on the show before, but not in my memory have I heard someone sort of express how it impacts how they present themselves, and had this transparent of a dialogue. So I was curious what your thoughts on that were.
I liked it as a thought experiment because I think it's something that I mean, I in the corner of the comedy scene that I inhabit is very much the femme queer like space, so I feel like these are the conversations I'm having all the time. And when I saw that represented on Housewives, on a show that I feel like some of the fandom may not be having these conversations with their friends, I was just like, that's really interesting. I love that we're opening up this perspective. And I found it interesting, especially in contrast to a lot of the housewives were saying, oh, she's so uptight. Oh, she never shows herself off. Like there was really this like sentiment that she needed to change something about herself. And I thought it was really cool that she was just like, no, I just stopped caring about the male gaze and that's what they're picking up on. And I think that's an interesting thing for people who are socialized female to think about when you're criticizing a woman for what they are or are not doing. Is that coming from your heart or is that coming from a social convention? And it's there's no right answer. It's just like it's worth examining. And I thought it was really fascinating to examine it on this show that is very much about women who have wealthy husbands. So I was like, oh, that's interesting to me. So I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was a great moment too, because we often see on these shows the women all being like, "Oh, you look so hot, you look so hot," and it's great because they're like, very supportive of each other. They're very reinforcing of each other. That's one of the positive things of the show. But in this moment, you see a moment where they're like, "Oh, we want you to look hot, Jenna. You look hot," and she's like, "Well, you know what? That's not what I'm. That's not my thing right now, actually. Like that's what I used to do, and that's not what I'm going for now." And to just like kind of like flip the script a little bit and be like, "Okay, it's awesome to like support each other, but what if we're like reinforcing a more narrow idea of what we should look like or be like? That isn't what I want right now." And I thought that was a great moment for that.
Yeah, and that's such a good point cuz I remember like I have this memory of being at a girls' night with some friends where they were all talking about and this is very much a narrative in girl world right now about oh, we hate bras, don't you hate bras? And I was like, I actually like my bra. I have big heavy boobs and I like having some support, and it just feels good to me to wear a bra. And they were all like, what? And they were like, let's just not wear bras tonight, like, and being supportive of each other. But then when it came to my choice that I didn't want to take off my bra, they were trying to get me to take off my bra. And I was like, aren't we isn't this supposed to be about like choice? And so it's interesting that the support goes away when I'm not following the norm. um
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
yeah, so that is, it's interesting that I can kind of relate to that feeling of like, oh, we're all so supportive when we're the same, but where does that
Hmm.
sisterhood go where I'm bucking a trend or I'm just not the same as you in this regard?
Right.
Yeah, totally. And even if you're like coming from a place where you're, what you're doing is trying to empower someone, not realizing that, you know, what you're actually doing is, um reinforcing a view or a pressure or some sort of harmful negative um social convention that you can still be doing harm even when you're not intending to
Hmm.
so um yeah, I just thought this was a great moment as well.
I loved it. And actually, just really quickly, the dress she was wearing, I thought was still very in line with her aesthetic. I thought it was interesting that they were all like, you should do this more, you should do this more. And I was like, just because she's often wearing quote unquote menswear, this dress still is very high fashion New York to me. This look is still very like the long sleeves with like the bracelets over the sleeves. Like it was still very her. And I thought it was interesting that just because it was a dress, they were like, oh my God, so different. And I was like, is it? Like it still feels
Yeah.
like, yeah. So that was just something that I was rolling around in my head a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Did you have any other highlights from New York?
No, I think we went over a lot. Did either of you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, you already said it, Melanie, but critical support to Jenna ghosting everybody. That's great. You should do that. I do that all the time. It's just like I totally understand, and that way more than I understand everybody being mad at her for it. Ghosting from a party is cool. One a little factoid that I really like about ghosting from a party is that you ever heard the expression French exit, which is what is another term for when you leave a place without telling anybody.
Yeah.
French people call that filer à l'anglaise, like an English exit. So they both accuse the
Oh,
other of doing the same thing.
that's so
But
funny.
but for me, like if your choices are like confront everybody about the noise they're making while they're all drunk and having a good time, announce to everybody that you're leaving, both sound horrible, or just crack the door a tiny bit and slink out and hope nobody even hears your footsteps. I'm taking option C every time. That sounds like a no-brainer to me. Like, so absolutely, absolutely support that choice. I think I do think Brynn was being a baby about the double standard stuff. I get Craig that she is doing a strategy thing. I thought it came off as being whiny, and like just like trying to play her hand too hard. And and Brynn's like flirty thing. I mean, you've already kind of touched on it, Melody, but it's like it's so like just straight down the middle, so straightforward. It's almost irritating. It's just like too unsubtle, which is like, okay, guys, like really neat flirting hack you might not have heard before. Just like be hot and show naked pictures of yourself.
Oh my God.
You
Okay, that
hack their
does
mind. Like, wow, man.
that does remind me of a
Amazing.
part that I love that Ubah made me laugh when she said, maybe that's why there's 3 engagements. And she was like, because she was just like, you shouldn't be having to play these like tricks on, and like she said literally like the type of man you're going to attract with that trick is like, is that worth it? Like, unless you're just looking for a bit of naughty fun, it's like, so you're gonna date the guy who was attracted to you because you were looking at naked photos of yourself next to him at a party, like.
Yeah. I mean, Ubah's advice is pretty straightforward too, but that's a little bit more psychology behind it. The whole thing, like,
Yeah,
just ask for help, ask for assistance. There was, I think it was Ben Franklin or something. One of those early American writers said something like, if you want somebody to like you, don't do a favor for them, ask them to do a favor for you. And I
yeah,
feel like that's a little more like psychologically complex, because that's the thing that works. Like, I mean, they're both hitting on the same idea that, like, um not to sound too much like a 90s stand-up guy or something, but it's like not that hard, I think, to like get a straight dude to be interested, and being like, but the idea of just being like, you know I need your assistance with something is like, that's going to be like a winner almost every time, right? Like, that'll
yeah.
work for me. I have a puppy dog brain, right? If somebody comes to me and is like, can you help me with something? I'm like, oh my god, I can do something for you. Are we gonna get married? Like, amazing. That's awesome. Like,
Yeah,
that
people love to feel like the expert, right? And like, as long as you're not
totally.
dumbing yourself down and making yourself helpless, like in Mean Girls, where she like pretends to be bad at math and she's actually good at math. But if you can
Yeah,
find
yeah,
something, like she said, at an airport, you're like, oh my God, do you know where this gate is? Like, that doesn't make you look stupid. It just opens a conversation and it invites
yeah,
them to
yeah.
help you out. It does play a little on the gender, like damsel in distress thing, but I also think
Totally.
she was being tongue in cheek when she said that. I don't think she even necessarily does that every time. She was just like, "Well, this is what I do." Like, but I think
Yeah.
she just goes up to someone and says hi. She seems confident enough to do that.
Oh yeah, she probably goes up to somebody and says the weirdest thing they've ever heard in their life, and that'll work too.
Yeah. That's there's a psychological term for it. It's like flipping the script, where you do something so unexpected that like all bets are off and you have all the control.
Mm, game theory stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but my favorite moment actually was when Sai talks about like growing up poor, because I haven't found Sai like interesting so far, because mostly what we've seen of her is like her like making jokes that are like pretty kind of obvious lame jokes. But some of the things that we've seen from her before, like, oh, I'm packing for to be away for 2 days and I have to bring a million outfits because I have to wear a different outfit every 5 minutes, which is like just kind of like an obvious gag. It seems to be a little more significant when she talks about growing up in a poor household and like, being poor until adulthood, and talks about what that means to her psychologically and why that like affects things like her dislike of dollar stores, where somebody who grew up upper middle class will think that a dollar store is cute. That I thought was really interesting to me, and the fact that we have a bit of a bond happening between Brynn and Sai over that was a moment that was really promising to me, because these are both characters that haven't like given me much yet in terms of actual reasons to be interested in who they are as people. So far, it's still early in the show, so it's normal that we haven't seen much from too many people. But having them bond over the fact that they both had poor childhoods, and that there are like psychological differences as a result of that, was really interesting and promising, and nice, and kind of sweet. And it's promising also to have like to have a conversation about class starting in the show, that I hope will continue a little further on, because that's always going to be a part of these shows, in New York especially. But New York, it's especially more focused on a class, in term signified as cultural capital rather than like just financial capital. But this kind of like classic old school definition of class, in the terms of like what material conditions you were raised in and how that affects what's important to you as an adult. That's something that's very interesting to me, and I hope that we see more of that going forward, and we get to see more lines drawn along along those axes. So I really appreciated that discussion, having it at night with their little plastic sippy cups around the fire was like just like aesthetically a good geography for them to be in, and that was the best scene for me. That was my favorite part.
I liked that part too. At first, because sometimes when wealthy people say they grew up poor, I don't know what they mean by that. Like, I'm like, how, so at first I had my guard up because I was like, well, I'm still shopping at the dollar store, so I was a little like, but
Yeah.
then as she got into it and was really describing her day to day and how scrappy she had to be, like, I actually started Googling her. Like, I was like, how'd she get her money? Like, how did she turn it around? Like, it did make me more invested in her character. And I thought the way she told the story was like, as she was talking, she was making it funny and entertaining. She wasn't like, woe is me, but she was all like, hey guys, it's not the cute, like, it's not like you're acting like it's so cute of you to be like, I'm rich, but the dollar store is so fun. And she was kind of like, can you just remember that like some people have to shop there? And yeah, I appreciated that moment as well.
Yeah, Sai was a bit of a standout for me this episode as well because, yeah, like you said, Dylan, I don't think we've seen very much that has really given us a foothold on who she is and what she's going to be bringing to the table. And yeah, she was like very open about her past, and I thought that was really refreshing. And I thought that we, yeah, just got a bit more of a fuller picture of who she is.
Yeah.
Dylan, did you have any other highlights from New York?
No, that's about it. I basically agree with everything Melody said about Jen too. Well, I already said that, and it's still the Jenna show for me. Like it's still her show, and somebody else is gonna have to step up to try to like challenge the idea that it's just like a one woman show, basically.
Yeah, I wrote that Jenna's who I think I am deeply on the inside, but I'm often letting my people pleasing stop me from being my most Jenna self. And I was like, I'm gonna let it out. Like, she really, I want to watch it more just to like feel empowered by her character.
Yeah, totally. And Jenna is someone that I think right before we did a live stream the night of the premiere of this, and we were kind of speculating on the housewives and what they were going to bring to the table. And since Jenna was the most like well known person on this cast, um, kind of had the most to go on with her. And just based on what I've seen on Instagram and Reddit, I was like, oh, I feel like Jenna's going to be this villain because there's all these stories about
Hmm.
people that have had run-ins with her where she has not been warm, and she hasn't really engaged very well, and people that have worked at J Crew and like have tried to make small talk with her and it just not like being friendly. And I was like, okay, so maybe we're gonna get this hardcore villain coming in that is like really off, is really going to be aggressive. And we've gotten the complete opposite, but everything that you've read kind of tracks now that we have this like fuller picture of who she is. And it is very endearing and like very I identify a lot with sort of the awkward and the anxiety of it all. I just have been really pleasantly surprised with her. So I 100% agree with you guys that Jenna is really the star. There
I
is one person that we haven't really got around to talking about yet, and that's Jessel. And
Oh
I think
yeah.
she's given us two really strong episodes back to back. I mean, she has not come across likable, and she hasn't seemed like she's trying to come across likable, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Um, I love a villain who, or someone that is going to go for a villain, or someone that is going to like be rough around the edges and really agitate things socially. It's such a like necessary part of the show, and the fact that she's doing this and she's not delicate about it, she's very clumsy. She reminds me a lot of Shannon from Real Housewives of Orange County, except Shannon is like likable and trying to please people and clumsy, whereas Jessel's the opposite. She's just like clumsily offending people and being very negative. And I really love it. I also think that she's funny, or she's trying to be funny, and she's just like it's not landing. It's landing in such a way that people are just like very put off by her, and it's so fun for me to watch. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that perspective, the clumsiness. I do think now that you mention it, her sense of humor is a little outdated. Like, I think years ago it would have been funny to walk out like, I look like a fucking Christmas tree in this. And now I think we've pivoted and we're like finding other ways to be funny than like just to like shoot something down aggressively. Um, but I
But like I
think,
said in the previous episode, she was right. She got the worst one.
yeah.
It wasn't a good fit for her. She was right to say it.
And I'm glad
I
I
agree
saw
with
you
her.
I saw you nodding when I said that earlier, and I was like, okay, good, because I was like, oh well, it is ugly. And like I wouldn't say anything, but I would be quietly heartbroken that this fashionista brought everyone little outfits and that mine was ill-fitting and kind of old-fashioned. Like it looked a little off the rack for me, and that's, you know, as I know from RuPaul's Drag Race, off the rack is a real insult in the fashion world. So yeah, I just didn't love it, but I did. Yeah, I didn't get much from Jessel in this. I was just like, yeah, she sucks. Like I was like, she's mean. Um, but like I like a villain, but I wasn't tasting villain the way that I would have liked her to maybe stir up a little more drama. Or I'm not sure what I wanted from her. I was just like, oh, she's just rude. But I do
Yeah.
like, now that you mentioned the clumsiness, that is kind of endearing to just be like a clumsy villain.
Yeah, it's something that we don't really see a lot in reality TV in general. Like usually if you've got a villain, you kind of picture them as a mastermind, and we're not really getting that from Jessel. I love that it's this kind of like unapologetic honesty, and like just trying to be funny but just like not hitting. That is really landing her in these situations where, you know, she's the bad guy. I especially loved the Sag Harbor lunch where she was giving her apology to Jenna, which was like a total non-apology. I loved her being like, I see you, I hear you, you're heard, I really appreciate the thought, and I would gladly take it and exchange it for something else.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good stuff. I like that.
Yeah. No, it was funny how she just, and I will say I see myself in that like I can apologize, I can meet you halfway, I can see your perspective, but I cannot lie. So it's like I would have to still assert that I did not like it. Like, and it's just like this part of my brain where there's like I was talking about this with a friend the other day where there's like an alarm that goes off and you're like, I can't not say the thing, and you have to say it. And you're like, why can't I just swallow this? But yeah, I could see myself in that a little bit.